Ladies and gentlemen, as part of our well-oiled machine, we are starting our luncheon speaker exactly on time, which is more than the clock behind me can say for itself. So it gives me kind of a huge pleasure to introduce to you Alfonso Sánchez-Tabernero. Alfonso is a giant in the field of media management. He, in fact, has built it to a large extent in Spain. He is known to all of us for his writings and contributions and participations. We have all read his work, we've cited his work, we are very proud to be associated with him. And he has now been also recognized as becoming the president, the rector of the University of Navarra in Pamplona, but not only in Pamplona, they also have distinguished business school campuses in Barcelona and Madrid and in New York, in fact. And so it gives us a kind of huge pleasure to introduce him as our luncheon speaker. He can talk both from a perspective of an expert in the media and as an academic leader, and he will address the topic, media ownership and the future of journalism. He has also asked me to tell you that he will conduct this as a bit of an open dialogue. He will not stand behind a lectern and read a long speech, but he will give kind of comments and will invite comments from the audience, and it will be highly interactive.
Okay, thank you very much, Eli. It's an honor for me to be here and a pleasure. Although those over expectations always are a bad start, because the delivery usually doesn't match the expectation. And then because the other problem is that it is siesta time, at least for Spanish standards, and I guess that most of you may sleep now. So what I wanted to do is to say something about media ownership and the future of journalism. But I'm not providing any data, any empirical evidence, just opinions. So what academics used to call useless opinions, okay? But in fact, what I want to do is to provoke some sort of reaction in the audience. So I will speak about three things. First of all, about the context of the media markets. And I'm speaking basically about content media, not platform media, which are more interested in this kind of media. So first of all, the context of the markets and how that is evolving. Second, about the content we can receive, the delivery of media. And third, some sort of conclusion, with singular conclusion. So it seems to me that in the old times, I'm not saying in the good old times, in the old times, the good times are our times, okay? In the old times, media markets have basically two important characteristics. First of all, most part of the media were oligopolistic, okay? We have 2, 3, or 4 local papers or regional papers or national papers, 2, 3, or 4 TV networks and radio networks, and the same applied at worldwide level with the music industry and the film industry. And that happened because the barriers to entry were very strong. We used to have legal barriers, technological barriers, financial barriers, distribution barriers, and so on. And because of that, leading actors in the industry used to have high profits and also low risk, okay? They were able to protect their territories. Okay, first thing, oligopolies. And second thing, most part of the media, or at least a big part of the media, were family-owned. And that means that the family, this is a generalization, I'm generalizing today a lot, okay? Family media used to have a strong connection with the brand. And they used to have a strong interest in the community they were serving. Okay? So they were very much long-term oriented. The bad thing of this kind of ownership was that sometimes those family-owned media were not very professional, were not very transparent, and also in some cases they didn't have enough capital to compete. But I think that those two things are changing quite quickly. First of all, oligopolies have been eroded, at least from the point of view of the choice of the consumer. Entry barriers are weaker, and actually what happens today is that we have mainly intangible barriers. Barriers today are brands, prestige, relationships, knowledge, innovation, connections. So there are more competitors, or at least more substitutes, if we want to know what will happen with elections in the US, in next elections. We have many media outlets we can check, we can analyze, we can read. So that means that more competition will lead towards more innovation in the market, lower prices. Also, in some cases, if the offer is very diversified, the companies will have less resources to invest in quality. So what we'll have is that we'll see that there are more shops to buy, although many of those shops will be located in big shopping malls like Facebook or Google or wherever, and that's maybe very good for the shopping mall and not so good for the shop itself. But what I'm saying is that we have less oligopolistic positions, at least in terms of the possibility to check or to get this kind of news or this kind of entertainment in the market. And then, concerning ownership, what we have seen in the last years is that many family-owned media have been transformed in public companies stock in the stock exchange, and that has led towards some sort of short-termism, which means that companies are very much pressured to maximizing profits today. It was Schumpeter who used to speak about creative destruction, to speak about how companies should innovate. I think that what we have seen today is some sort of non-creative destruction, because what companies are doing is, let's say, is milking the cow till the cow shows the white flag. You know, I'm exhausted. You are cutting costs. You are getting more revenues today, more profits today, but you are cutting quality, innovation, and so on. So that's about the context. Less oligopolistic markets, more short-term orientation. The content of media. I think that if we go to media, we can find three kinds of gratifications, three kinds of contents, three kinds of offers. First of all, journalism, news. News to understand the world, or to understand my country, or my neighborhood, or my basketball team, or whatever, news. Journalism, okay? Second kind of content is entertainment. I want to be entertained. I need some stories to enjoy myself, or to forget about my problems or about my failures or whatever. So entertainment. And third kind of content is what we can call virtual socialization. I want to be part of a network of colleagues or friends or person who share some interest or whatever. So my point is that more competition or less oligopolistic markets and more short-term orientation in media companies is not bad for entertainment. Entertainment is basically about finding blockbusters, the next big thing, the big song, album, TV show, movie that will allow me to get a lot of money. And for blockbusters, you can use the system of trial and error. You can try till you get the big thing, the big blockbuster. More competition and more short-termism is not bad for virtual socialization. It's not bad for getting networks with enough quality and quantity to get some money. So it's not bad for this permanent search for increasing the quality and the quantity of the network. But short-termism is not particularly good for journalism, because journalism is about capturing the interest and the trust of the people. If you allow me to do some sort of comparison between journalism and education, or a news business and a university, which is something familiar for me, I'm speaking about how to run a media company, but I'm running a university. So I think it's quite funny to understand that most part of the best universities in the world are not profit-oriented. Okay? Presidents or rectors usually are not MBA people or managers. We are professors, sometimes professors of medieval history or biochemistry. And the same happens with the deans. So what happened is that those companies are led by people who care about teaching and research, not about profits. So I will say that a successful university is an organization able to get enough money to spend it in providing good teaching and research. So if we apply that to the news business, not the entertainment business or the virtual socialization business, what I see is that success in the news business, in the business of journalism, requires long-term orientation, requires passion for journalism, passion for news, passion for the impact of those news in societies, requires managers who are able to motivate a newsroom, a group of talented journalists, requires integrity, requires to consider audiences or users as partners more than as customers, requires an internal culture that doesn't give a permanent priority to cutting costs or getting more profits versus increasing the quality or the innovation of the media outlet. So my conclusion is that what we will see in the future in the business of journalism is that we will have two kinds of dominant organizations. First kind of organizations will be non-profit organizations, or at least some kind of companies with a moderate interest in profits. So those companies will be more interested in contents, effects, citizens, democracy, values. Although I should say that those companies will have a challenge, which is to be professional, to have big size in some cases. In other cases, you don't need big size to be competitive. The challenge to get enough money to compete in the market. And we can point out here the case of National Geographic and the change of owners, the recent change of ownership. But one type of organization will be this non-profit organization, or at least an organization with a moderate interest in profits. And the second organization, the typical organization providing good journalism and competing with success in the market, will be big firms, big corporations, profit-oriented, with a diversified group of shareholders, but controlled by one or a small group of shareholders or managers who will understand that the future of the company is, or the future of the business of journalism is conquering the trust of the audience. Okay, okay, that's my view that I will like to share with you. So, short-termism from family-owned companies to public companies quoted in the stock exchange, more voices in the market, more choice. So the future will be how we are able to keep this balance between professionalism, capital, and so on, and protect the value of the brand, conquering the trust of the citizen, and so on. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and comments and so on. Okay. I would suggest not only questions, but comments, or everybody.
Yeah, let's have lots of comments, and then Alfonso will respond.
Okay,
to that.
that's the best thing.
So, since I'll be the massive sermons, Paulo.
Yeah, Alfonso, you mentioned the dilemma of media companies. In fact, that is the balance between to innovate and a profitable business. Like the directly question is, do you think today we can talk about news organization or communication organization? I mean, because today, in the past, we saw the pure media companies. Today, because there are some pressure, because the news are not profitable in major part of the countries. I'm doing economic study for Portuguese regulatory entity. My conclusion that the net incomes are declining in different years. So today, the news business in Portugal is not profitable. But the company is trying to compensate the market to exploring other business relating with communication, entertainment, etc. And today the advertising is declining because the media companies compete with other companies, including below the line communication. So the question is, how the companies can innovate, can add value, can focus on journalism if the business today is more difficult in terms of profitability?
Okay, the first question already kind of violated my instructions, which is to make comments rather than questions. Because if you ask questions, then Alfonso will have to get up like a yo-yo in concerts. But if we take the question mark,
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
And introduce yourself because we're
John Pavlik from Rutgers University, and I have a comment or observation that's anecdotal, not data-driven, but for a lot of reasons, I watch a lot of television news. I argue that it's for professional reasons, but I watch like the same news from different channels, different networks, and I'm always struck by how often they have the exact same stories in the same order, usually covering the same things, and about the only place they seem to vary is when they do their own cross-product promotions, where they'll say, and last night, David Letterman did his last show, and then I'll have a 10-second clip from it. And then at the end, they always conclude now with kind of what we might call a happy news story. It'll be a story about somebody who has trained this dog to do something really wonderful, or it's always something really happy at the end. So they have a whole 20 minutes of bad news, and then 2 minutes at the end of something happy. And so I'm just seeing that I think there's a kind of, this in a way connects what you were saying, Paulo, but it's kind of a blurring of borders between entertainment and journalism. So they're trying to get entertainment in there to, provide something happy and also entertaining.
Okay.
Robert Pepper. So, John, is there a difference between television and print, right, in terms of the happy talk piece? I think there is actually. But, so just some observations. So we've seen in Washington, Jeff Bezos from Amazon buy the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. And in the short period he's had it, there's been, I've seen significant, both what I would consider improvement, but that's sort of very judgmental. But in terms of the quality, but the expansion, for example, of international world coverage, he's made sort of long-term investments, or he says they're long-term, he's made investments that actually have increased the range of the news stories. And he's been providing additional, some of the stories are going deeper in depth. So, I will, my sort of judgment, personal judgment is actually, it's been an improvement. It's not family owned, it's an individual, but somebody who says publicly he's committed to journalism values. Second, what we've seen with the Pearson ownership of the Financial Times and the Economist and the restructuring of those two global publications, but having done it in a way to maintain relatively small number of owners that have been vetted by the other board members that at least going into that claim to support the journalistic values of the editorial positions of those two publications, which would seem to support, I'm not quite sure which of your two models that fits into. It'd be interesting to think about that.
You mean I said that there are like two models. First one is not for-profit companies.
These are for profit, but the question
And
is...
the second is for-profit, but with a small group of shareholders or managers who will protect quality, whatever that means, or the value of the brand, or the long-term orientation, or the respect for the public. That may be the case with the new shareholders of Pearson, of Financial Times.
That campaign. We heard yesterday a lot of news media, particularly the traditional print media, have been advertiser supported, especially in this country, to a lesser extent elsewhere in the world. And we heard yesterday how CPMs are tanking, and that's becoming harder and harder to generate a lot of money from that. We also know that consumers have not been very willing to pay for the news. They think they should get it free. That model, the model used to work when we had chains of newspapers like Gannett and big chains. There is no real equivalent online, the online world of chains, since everything is sort of big. I guess to get to the question or my statement, I don't see where the money is going to come from to be able to sustain more than a handful in any country. El País might survive, and the New York Times, but to do serious journalism at City Hall and local serious journalism as opposed to just covering the basketball scores. And I really don't see nonprofits as being anything but a little piece to the side. So, I mean, is there a model out there that's going to allow us to continue to get that kind of journalism?
Well, we have at least two more and myself. So I always start with you, then with the state. Go ahead.
I just want to comment that it's very inspiring talk. And Alfonso, you have said that to define the future of the journalism, there are at least two keywords: innovation and creativity. So what we can see that there are a lot of new business models, and we see the crowdfunding model for hosting posts, and we see the success of BuzzFeed, and which has claimed themselves as a profit-making media organization. And also we see a lot of the transformation of the traditional media companies. Like even we go to the website of New York Times, we see they are using a lot of new technological tools like the offshoots you mentioned yesterday. So there are a lot of innovation and great activities going on. So it's hard to define to say what the future of the journalism or future of the media industry will look like, but we know that it will be moving fast than our imagination. So I think it's very meaningful to remind our students that they always need to be innovative and creative. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Your speech was in two parts, the content and context, and considering the Spanish multinational corporations like Banco Santander and some media companies, they really have market shares in Latin American markets, and there is really in somehow historical role model type of things. From that perspective, in Latin American connection, including Telefónica España, the content and the context are really homogeneous or not. Maybe I think your speech or presentation should have included both sides. Am I right? Or just because of this commercial ties and the cultural ties, and there should be a little bit more diversified content and context approach to the analysis of Spanish market. That's my comment.
Thank you, Hussein.
Just to add to his point about there's no real Gannett or type of packaging or bundling, all the profitability is going to the large technology companies. So if you look at Google Ad Exchange, they're essentially acting as that bundling system. And you have the problem of antiquated software and technological departments in these major publications that are slow to adopting these technologies. And there are things going through the CNPA, like the California Newspaper Publishers Association, but they're 10, 15 years behind the times. And so you have the difference of human capital and developing these technologies that will always lag behind the most recent innovations that come through, which always find the white space for profitability. So my comment is that big companies, you're gonna have to start looking at these tech companies who are finding profitability and turning into a news platform or a news content creator.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There was one other comment. Michael, yes?
I'm Michael McPhee, CITI. Your remarks about ownership structure made me think of the Thomson Reuters, the founder's share that's voted in Reuters in terms of the trust principles that guide that portion of their business. Do you envision that model, which has been obviously very successful for Reuters and then now Thomson Reuters, do you see that as being a model for other large corporations going forward? That's sort of in the form of a question, Ellie, but.
Question. Is there any other comment? Because otherwise I have one, and then we can go to Alfonso. One more for me.
Yep.
See, in some ways, what we have been discussing and hearing about, it kind of leads to the kind of conclusion that there is a little dirty secret for quality journalism, in that it is tied to market power, that it is part of monopoly rent, that in the monopoly system of television, state ownership, you could subsidize quality journalism, that when there's local newspaper monopolies, they have money to support quality journalism, and that when there are only a few television channels, such as the United States commercial channels, they also have an interest in maintaining a reputation so that they will kind of look good to their government regulators, etc. So that, therefore, journalists and quality journalism is tied to market power rather than to pluralism, at least economic pluralism. Now technology is changing and makes that model unsustainable. So first, because subscription numbers are dropping enormously, say, for newspapers. Secondly, as Ben pointed out, and people point out, the advertising numbers are, everybody thinks that they'd be able to support themselves through advertising, but if you add it all up and think in terms of people's attention, it just cannot happen. So we'll see kind of a great decline of rates, and therefore also of the ability to sustain itself. This all leads me to the conclusion that journalism cannot be economically supported anymore by kind of a traditional commercial model. And I think that's similar to what Alfonso concludes too. Any more than your other business, education can be easily supported on a commercial basis without state support, without all kinds of other side benefits coming from it. So therefore, what are the alternatives? Well, the first one, I think, is the public support. And here there are, particularly in Europe, significant numbers that go to taxes, in effect, that are being levied. The problem that I see is that they all go to the public broadcasters. And so one should really break that part up and make this a subsidy to quality form of media rather than to any particular institution. That, of course, will be not a popular thing with these institutions, but I think that's really the only thing how to distribute the pie more widely. The second basis would be that journalists would be like professors, and a lot of people who play music and so on do this would have a day job, such as teaching in journalism school, for example, or in other schools, and will do this just like academics. They don't make any money writing academic articles. They would not make money per se in doing journalism, but it would be kind of like a sideshow, and possibly the one where their heart is more strongly. The third option is, and here we disagree slightly, is your option of the public-spirited, rich, deep pocket individual, because that's kind of this noblesse oblige type thing, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Who gave the example of, yes, Pepper gave the example of Bezos. Yeah, we like Bezos. He seems to be a good guy. Suppose the name, however, would be the Koch brothers. How would you feel about the Washington Post being owned by the Koch brothers? And the answer is probably not. And and actually there are probably more deep pockets that we don't like than the ones that we do like. Just one more thing. You see, one thing that we observe in this study is that in several countries, there are rich industrial companies. I think Turkey is an example, India is an example, where the rich industrial companies, they buy the newspapers because they're cheap, because they're not making any money, and because it's probably cheaper to own a newspaper than to go through a public relations effort. Why have to influence journalists when you can just buy them, literally? Okay, so that's why I think that this is not a good model, exceptions aside. So lastly, so I think that a lot of journalism would be voluntarist, kind of like the blog people. And here the question is, how do we, in a way, separate the junk from the unjunk, from the quality? And so there's a real role for some quality institutions, such as journalism schools, to give kind of like seals of quality, saying this blog or this publication is really great, and this one, well, we are not going to rate it, something like that. So that people out there, among the millions of opinions, will actually have something that some people have thought is worth quality. Now, of course, you can say, why not do this so that like and unlike type system? But that, in some ways, kind of leads to probably to more popular, kind of like the stories about movie stars and their latest divorce and stuff like that, rather than to the stuff that probably we are more interested in.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind comments. I'm not able to answer all of them. Just a few comments. First of all, my first point was that the business of news is completely different than the business of entertainment or virtual conversations. And of course, you mentioned, you asked about news or communications companies. Companies are basically communication companies because they provide all kind of contents, and also because the frontier between contents are not clear. We have infotainment and we have different kind of things that we don't know if it is advertising or editorial content, unfortunately, but that happens too. Anyway, so what happens is that frontiers are not clear, companies deliver almost everything, but when we pay attention to news as a business, it seems to me that we are speaking about a thing that is very expensive. Quality means to spend a lot, and then conquering the trust of the people is really demanding, because you should not do many things that will be very good for your accounts, but bad for your prestige. So that was the first thing. Sometimes John mentioned that we see sometimes the same stories without enough analysis or perspectives and so on. And that happens because that's cheaper. That's the question, obviously. Another issue is that when we speak about quality, that's very easy to apply to the car industry, but in the news industry, it's not so clear. For instance, if we say quality means balanced news, but some people, when they read a piece of news, is to reinforce their bias, their perspectives, and so on. So we are speaking about a intangible asset, which is difficult to assess, to define, and so on. I think that a bank, Santander or whoever, definitely is a bad owner for a media company, because the priority will be to defend the business of the bank, the many businesses and interests of the bank. Bezos may be a better owner, maybe, but I'm thinking today also, for instance, this week a new, just 2 more minutes, okay, because I don't like to be. A new media outlet has been launched in Spain called El Español. It has been launched by Pedro J. Ramirez, one of the famous journalists and alumni from my university. Sorry, that's advertising, but anyway. So he was the former editor of El Mundo. And I asked in my lecture room last week, is there any subscriber of the newspaper? And 2 students were subscribers. So the outlet has started with 10,000 subscribers before the launching of the paper. And why are you subscribed? And the answer was, because I believe in that. I want to, that goes to your, Ben, I think that to your question, I think that many initiatives, projects, and so on will be supported not by Jeff Bezos, but by 30,000 people, and that will be enough to have a good brand providing journalism. And finally, in the old times, we used to expect that the state, and that was to one of your many questions, that the state will sort out the problems. In my case, coming from the south of Europe, where we have a tradition of the state creating more problems than sorting out problems because they influence the content, I will say good journalism in many countries will be not supported by the state, the subsidies or whatever, but will be supported by civil society, citizens that want to have a brand that is not speaking about the good things of Santander Bank and so on, but that they are just providing good quality of news. Thanks to all of you.
Alfonso, thank you very much for this very enlightening presentation, colloquium of sorts, and so
my pleasure.
It's been really great having you here at Columbia.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much.